QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Common errors with account numbers. Let's get into it with Intuit. QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Common errors when using account numbers. Most of the errors with account numbers, the problems that people have when using account numbers, are a result of not thinking through how to put the account numbers in from the beginning. So if we put the account numbers in from the beginning in a way that's going to cause problems in the future, then we're likely to have those problems in the future. And as time passes, those problems will typically get larger. That's going to be similar with all of accounting. So we want to set up the process correctly. And the better we set up the system at the beginning, then the less likely we are to have problems in the future. So one of the problems that could often happen is people set up account numbers that are not in alignment with the chart of accounts. And that means that we thought about the idea that the chart of accounts is going to be the primary lining up, because that's basically the balance sheet and the income statement. That's how you want to line up the accounts. So if we start to create some account numbers that are putting accounts that aren't lined up within that system, meaning the account numbers are created not secondary to the account types, but just creating some account number, then you're going to have problems. And again, those problems can grow as time passes, not providing enough room between account numbers to add new accounts. So this is often an issue because we often want to have like nice small account numbers. Like you might want to like have account numbers with only 3 digits, and you might be able to get away with that. But you want to make sure you typically want more digits, because you want to make sure that you're adding enough room within the accounts. Meaning, if you just take your expense accounts and you say these are accounts 10 through 100, and you just one by one lay them out. Well, what if you want another expense account like right between two of those expense accounts, like we saw with those sub accounts with the auto? Like if you had auto expense and you want to break out auto and fuel expense, auto insurance and stuff, and you want to break that out at a later point in time, well, you can't do that if you labeled one as 10 and the other one 11. You can't get in. Now you got to put a decimal in between it or something. So that's one of the big problems that people often don't think through when they add account numbers. And that's one of those things that it's fine at the beginning, but as time passes, you're going to want to do things and you can't do it because the account numbers are limiting you. Not adding account numbers to all accounts. So it's quite possible that some people, turn on account numbers for a little while and then we turn off account numbers, and then we have some accounts that have account numbers and some that don't. And that could just result in basically a mess of accounts at a future point in time. And then if we want to use account numbers, we would have to think about, how do I clean up this chart of accounts to add the proper account numbers to them, and we may think about that in a future presentation. Here we are back in our sample file. We have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view dropdown, selecting the open windows list. We're now going to open up the chart of accounts by going to the lists dropdown and then the chart of accounts. So here's going to be our chart of accounts. Now, oftentimes you could get help from QuickBooks with the account numbers, because when you first set up the QuickBooks system, if you just simply turn on the account numbers, they will often have some default account numbers. And if they look good to you, then you could follow their system of account numbers, although you might want to change it to whatever you think would be the best or most appropriate account number system for you. So that could help out with that first starting point, which is, what kind of account groupings do I want to line them up to the account types? So if you just turn on the account numbers, in other words, QuickBooks will typically have some somewhat standardized system in terms of grouping things like the asset accounts in one grouping, liability accounts in another grouping of account numbers, and so on. And you could see a general system here with the assets basically starting in 1s, the liabilities starting in 2s, and then the equity with 3, and then 4 for the income accounts, and so on and so forth. That can give you a good idea, again, to start to visualize what the chart of accounts are going to be looking like. So also note that when people set up the accounts primarily, for example, you might set up the accounts primarily, and before you had any of these sub accounts, you just called it insurance, interest, payroll, and so on. And if you just called this, for example, 62101, and then this one 62102, 62103, just separating them by one number, and then you wanted to go back in and add these sub accounts, you couldn't really do it. Without having your account numbers out of order or redoing your entire account numbers, because you wouldn't be able to add an account in between the prior two accounts. So notice how this QuickBooks file has account numbers that are 5 digits long, which seems a bit excessive, right? That's a lot of account numbers. I mean, how many accounts do you need, right? You might be thinking so, but it can be useful to have the 5 digits because then you have a lot of flexibility to put accounts in between. And then when you're creating your first chart of accounts, you have a lot of ability to space them out. Because you can see something like the payroll expense down here, or the payroll liabilities. Like you could have started with just payroll liabilities and then sales tax, and then said, hey, I want to break out all these different payroll liability accounts within it, and there's 10 of them. So if I only spaced out my accounts by 5 numbers, by 5 digits, I wouldn't have enough room between them in order to add all those new breakouts that I want to have. So as you grow, of course, you're likely to have more accounts that will be added to the system, and the ability to have a lot of room between the accounts so that you can add whatever accounts you need will help a lot. Because if you don't have that room, then you're really limited. If I was to say, hey, I want to add all these accounts as sub accounts of the payroll liabilities, but I didn't break out the numbers between these two properly to have enough space to do that, then you're going to end up with something funny happening. You're going to end up with basically using account numbers that are out of order. And you can see some of the account numbers on this chart of accounts are out of order, and you might need to do that at least temporarily, but that obviously takes away from the power, the use of, the purpose of the account numbers. So we basically put together a little cheat sheet. We'll go over this next time on basically the ordering of the accounts. We basically took this from the QuickBooks system for the most part to order the accounts. And again, some of it's somewhat standardized, but you do have a lot of leeway if you have 5-digit account numbers, and so you could change it up a bit in terms of the ordering, like how you're going to group the account numbers by type. If you only have 4 digits, some people might just want a 4-digit account number. It might be a little bit easier. Then you're a little bit more restricted, obviously, in terms of the spacing of the account numbers. But you'll see some similarities between the two. So we'll take a look at that next time.